Hi there again, Mike Henderson here with the third installment on how to write a novel using Novel Factory. Now, I have started a new novel, which you simply do by going to File, New Novel, and up comes basically this blank screen. Because I want to talk about the story skeleton a little bit. Remember last time we filled in the premise and we have one sentence that describes the story, and at this point you should have already done that. But I'm going to start here because what happens is this. This has a default skeleton, which is basically the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a specific type of, it's really an analysis of story structure of all stories. It's not so much an outline as it is sort of a theory of how stories proceed, although it can be used and applied to an outline, which is what they do here. So they have it divided into 3 acts, and I'll talk briefly about what each one of these are in this case, so you understand what's going on here and why you need it. Introduction to the protagonist's world, call to action, and a crossing the first threshold. This accounts for Act 1, which is about 25% of the story. So we meet the protagonist in his ordinary world doing what he does. Consider the first Star Wars movie with Luke Skywalker. This shows him on actually the movie starts with a battle scene, so it gets you kind of a taste for what's going on. And some people call that the Iceman Prologue, Ice Monster Prologue, in other words. It's a reference to, I forget the name of the individual who came up with this idea, it's not mine. But if you look, for example, in Game of Thrones, it begins with a prologue relating to the Iceman. So what happens is you're introduced first to the antagonist. And that's kind of how Star Wars starts. But once we get away from that, we see Luke Skywalker in his ordinary world. He's the protagonist, of course, or the good guy. And so it shows him on this kind of a desert planet working on the farm with his aunt and uncle. Luke Skywalker, by the way, is a stereotypical type of character. So he's an orphan living with his aunt and uncle, which is Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, Harry Potter. So this might sound familiar to you. And we see what he's doing. So his job is to get some robots. So he goes off to do that. And this is where he discovers this. He picks up R2-D2 and his companion, whose name escapes me suddenly. But in any case, he picks up these two robots, and he comes across this message, and he goes to talk to Obi-Wan Kenobi because it's a message to Obi. And while he's showing this to Obi, Obi says, "Look, I need your help to fight the evil empire." This is the call to action. And now, usually with the call to action, there is a refusal of the call, and Luke does. He says, "I can't. My aunt and uncle need me, and I couldn't possibly abandon them. And why me? I'm nothing." Obi says, "Well, I'm too old to fight them anymore." And in any case, Luke goes back and he discovers that his aunt and uncle have been killed, and then he accepts the call to action. And then he and Obi-Wan cross the first threshold, which is when they walk into the crazy bar. And that is the end of Act 1 leads you into Act 2. And Act 2 constitutes usually 50% of the story. So the mentor teaches the protagonist. He has the first challenge. There's temptation, the dark moment. And all of these things are in Star Wars. So Obi teaches him how to use the weapon. They have challenges and the temptation. Dark moment is they're in the garbage disposal, for example. And in any case, that leads us to a plot point which is at 75%. By the way, the end of Act 1 is 25% plot point, so something major happens, and in this case, it's crossing the threshold into the bar. And here it's when they get out of the dumpster, basically, I think. Then Act 3 is the final conflict, right? So we have the battle where they blow up the Death Star, and then the return home. So we see the world. This is also known as a denouement. We see the world after the whole battle is over, and so. This is the scene where they're getting out of the spaceship, the fighters, and everybody's cheering them, and everybody's happy, and they get medals or whatever they get. Now, I like to divide my Act 2 into two parts. I get this from a person named Larry Brooks, who wrote a book called Story Engineering, which I think is extremely useful for new writers. And so you can add the act here, Act 4, and then you can add a new stage to it. So my Act 4, then would be the final battle, really. And then I'll add a new stage, and this is the denouement, which I think I spelled right, but whatever. And that's that. So I say okay, and it comes up, so it comes up with the skeleton the way I have made it. Now, I'll show you one more thing. So if I go here and I write intro to the protagonist's world, so we see Harry. Whoops, we'll capitalize Harry. I'm kind of a bugger about that. Harry Potter under the stairs. Okay. So it comes over to my Act 1, and this is just a summary. I'm brainstorming, and I said, okay, this is what is going to be. Harry Potter is under the stairs, and we see him as being mistreated by his horrible aunt and uncle, and that most horrible nephew. Not nephew. What is he? I guess he'd be his cousin. So his cousin is a monster. Call to action. Okay. So if I go to, if I say select it, I've got this in here. It's all saved. If I say select template. Loading it will overwrite your current skeleton data. In other words, it erases everything you have. So if I say yes, just so you see what it does, and I go here and I say, well, character-driven hero's journey. It gives you a little bit more detail. I say okay, and up it comes. And this is blank, you see. So if I say okay, I trot over here, and the Act 1 thing I had in here, Harry under the stairs, is gone. So once you are setting up your novel, you select this act structure, and you fill in anything, you've got to keep it or lose it, one or the other. So I'm going to stop there. When we come back, I will talk about the short synopsis.